Okay, the Lone Ranger. Johnny Depp and Gore at this point in time were making an absolute mint of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. Johnny Depp was a big fan of the Lone Ranger, really wanted to do one, so they were pretty much given full creative range when it came to making this film. This film, at 2 hours and 20 minutes, seems like it could have benefited from a little bit of editing here and there. The movie is actually told from old Johnny Depp. So it's Johnny Depp in old Tonto-esque makeup. And they do go back to him, so essentially he's telling this whole story to a kid. When the film was done, I was like, that sequence really didn't add much to it, and it felt like it was another layer to add on top. Had they removed that, this film would have been like 2 hours and 10 minutes, and it might have actually had a little bit better flow to it. Johnny Depp, as always, is an amazing character performer. Does a great job in this. Helena Bonham Carter is in this as essentially a one-legged prostitute. Kooky role, plays it to a freaking T. You got a great supporting cast. The plot has got almost way too much going on. You have a double origin plot. And ironically, the origin story told from Tonto perfectly overlaps with the origin story of the Lone Ranger. So you have two people on two different paths that there's a decent amount of interconnectedness to it. And then you find out why they end up running into each other. So that's nice, but you've got so many little spots here and there. Almost every character gets a decent amount of development. So no one really gets pushed to the side and doesn't get their moments. But certain characters, you could have been okay with them having not as much of a pronounced background. This film, nice action sequences, beautiful shots. A lot of it, some scenes were actually done with locations, like the train. The train was a legitimate train in a small area with a circular track. If you read about that, it's actually a really interesting thing they did with the train. The train was interesting. When you read those sorts of things, they actually built a train track. They actually had a train. They used a train. They had to tear everything down when it was done because there was no interchanges. And that's illegal to have. That was interesting. But the film itself just seems like a bad Pirates of the Caribbean film just set in a Western setting. It's got all of the Pirate of the Caribbean sort of plots to it. This is almost kind of getting to the point when you watch National Treasures and almost every, unless it's Brockheimer. The person did National, I want to say that was, if you watch National Treasure 1 and 2, you see the exact same beats. But this one has almost the exact same beats to the Pirates of the Caribbean films. Just with a lot less of the magic and the intrigue and the fun to it. It's got jokes, and a few of them are they're good jokes, they're just not real funny ones. So this film had way too much put into it. To the point that they tried to do so much, it's not, people say it's one of the worst films made. By no means. It's just not a very good film. Like the first Pirates in the Caribbean, people went, that was great. Second one, you went, that was pretty good. The first one was still better. Third one, you were like, I think these two guys have run their course together. By the fourth one, you were like, really? Ugh. And you can tell it with this being the fifth time they've worked together. Johnny Depp, great job, like I said. Lots of really solid acting. Was not a big fan of Armie Hammer. I don't know, he just didn't seem... It felt a lot like I was watching Brandon Fraser. If you looked at the Mummy movies and that sort of era. Yeah, he did a good job. I just really wasn't kind of feeling him. Westerns have a hard time in the American box office. They traditionally tend to not do very well. It's just this film I think came out at the wrong time. In 2003, they tried to do I think it was a Lone Ranger movie, and it did not do well. So a decade later, they thought throwing a lot more money at it would make a difference. If you're a Western fan, you've probably already seen it, and you probably thought, that's pretty good. If you're a Johnny Depp fan, this is another really unique character performance. Yeah, it's a good movie. It's nowhere near as bad as people say that it is, but this is one of those scenarios where you can tell that there needed to be somebody to kind of rein in some of the creative juices to make a film that would have had a lot better runtime. Certain scenes just seem to kind of drag. And with this sort of film where you want to have that nice, good, even pace is just kind of feels like a train getting out of the station, never quite hitting full speed until towards the very end, and by that time, you're an hour and a half into a film. No, actually, you're almost closer to 2 hours into the film, and it really hits its strides, and you're like, you should have been closer to here at like the hour mark.